Welcome to 3D View, one conversation, three different perspectives. I'm Lamondre Pugh.
I am David Perez.
And I'm Richard Strice. Thank you for joining us.
Recently, in October 12, we saw a message from the Director General of the World Health Organization. He was saying something that really clicked with us, and that sparked this conversation that we're going to have today. He was saying, a lack of leadership from global powers has prolonged the coronavirus pandemic. And we all know that leadership has been a problem. I know that it has been in Latin America, it has been in the US, it has been in basically around the world. And doing some research about this topic, I found some staggering data. It happens that Gallup did a survey among different companies in 2016, and they found that only 16% of managers had the skills to actually manage. That means that 82% of the people that were in positions of power didn't have the desirable skills to manage the people that they were trying to lead. So that means that what we're seeing now is just like the illness coming in full form. Something that has been brewing for a while is just something that we're realizing now, that if you don't have leadership, you really don't have a way to get out of a crisis. Because being a leader when everything's okay, when everything's fine, when you're doing great, is very simple, right? It's really all about not messing things up. And you could say that the fact that the stock markets were going up all of Trump's term were basically because of that. Things were okay. Things were fine. But as soon as things got bad, you could see him scrambling, not knowing what to do, not knowing who to go to. And I can tell you that we saw that here in Costa Rica. We saw that here in Latin America. All of our governments were lost because they were not leading the country. They were just at the helm, but not actually piloting the ship. So that's the conversation that we want to have today. Your thoughts, guys?
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It seems like what has happened is that we were pretty much on autopilot for quite some time, and things just were kind of happening. And yes, we'd see, little bumps here and little spikes there. And people would say, oh, that's the Trump bump in terms of the economy, or because things had not diminished to a point where the country was in shambles, or the world was in shambles for that matter. People were thinking, we're doing okay. We've got some excellent leaders. But then you quickly find that real leadership is tested in times of challenge, in times of adversity. And that's when the stuff that you're made of really comes up. So I think that this is a really appropriate conversation to have right now, particularly in the guise of a global perspective, and what leadership really looks like around the world. Richard?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. Crisis always brings out the best and worst in an individual, because the armor that we put around ourselves on a daily basis when we interact with people, both socially or through business or work, comes down, that wears very thin all of a sudden in times of crisis. And as you said, one's true character comes out, and that scales, I think, at a micro level, at an individual personal level, but also at a state level. When you think of countries, it's the same thing. You ultimately see what's the true character and nature of that business or country in times of crisis. Not only just internally how they act and treat within their borders, but also how they treat their allies as well. And so I think absolutely certainly the past few years, we have seen global level crises at multiple levels, financial. We've seen war. We've seen, now with the pandemic as well.
We've seen
we've seen
emotional crisis.
emotional crisis, and I think it's the culmination of all of these. Any one of those, I think we would have been able to bear, like we have, like you said. I think we've been operating on sort of autopilot, but as a result of these multiples all stacking up at an exponential level, I think we're seeing what the real mettle of individuals, of states, of countries, and that's it shows that we don't have strong leadership, that the individuals that we've put, at least here in the U.S. where they're elected, are not necessarily individuals who are best suited to be in leadership positions. And I think that goes to the issue, how and why. That's because I think politics have become more of a marketing thing than actual ability. And what ends up happening is we tend to elect people who through whatever best marketing mechanism they've been able to leverage, convince people to put them into those offices, as opposed to being valued or weighted by the public on their true record and their true political abilities or leadership abilities.
Right. I've always thought that actually government is a reflection of what's going on in society. It is a reflection, and in this side of the world, we know that companies are like our most elemental socio-economic thing that we can compare to the government, right? Because people are elected depending on their effectiveness, right, to perform different positions inside companies. And that's why I made in the introduction the parallel with governments and the leaders in companies not being prepared to actually lead. Because I think that the fact that we are electing people to government that are not prepared to actually lead people through a crisis or to lead them at all is because we, at some point during this last 10, 20 years, lost what it was to actually lead, what it meant to actually create change, for a positive change for every individual in an organization. And I think that companies are proof of that. When you're only focused on profit, you're not thinking about inclusion. It simply makes no sense to you. And you can get good results in profit, but inclusion simply doesn't matter to you. So there's a lot of people in your organization that are going to suffer as soon as something goes wrong. And what happened with governments? They were doing the same thing. There were a lot of people that were not as bad as they could have been if things were bad already. But as soon as things happened, again, for lack of a better term, that's not something that you don't want to say in the radio. you when things start going wrong, you can see who was, again, swimming without a swimsuit. So simply had nothing to stand on. And those people start, of course, asking for leadership. Who's going to take me out of this? Who's gonna lead me out of this desert that I'm in? Because I don't see the way. And then you turn to the organizations that were supposedly created to do that, and you find them lacking in answers, in solutions, in ideas. So that's the main problem, that at some point we lost what a leader was. What do you think a leader should look like, Lamondre?
Well, I have a definition that I like about leadership, because as many people as there are on the earth, there are different definitions as to what leadership is. But this one really resonates with me. And it's kind of a hybrid definition, in that some of it was influenced by John Maxwell, who's a really well-known leadership expert, and some other leadership experience and practitioners that I've been involved with. But the definition that I like for what is leadership, it is influence, or a person's ability to influence with an intended outcome. And honestly, that takes away the the moral compass in it. Because let's face it, you can lead someone in a very negative way and have very negative outcomes, or you can lead someone to very positive things. So now the question was, what do I look for in a leader? Well, integrity is one of those things. Integrity is something that's really important to me. Someone who will stand up, someone who will admit wrong, someone who will really have the people that they're leading, that they will have their best interest at heart. And a couple of things that was said earlier that stood out to me. Richard said that politics really has become more of a marketing exercise than a governing exercise, and I believe that. And I believe what they've become effective at leading or influencing people is influencing them to vote on their behalf, or influencing them not to vote at all. Either way, that gets that individual to their intended outcome. And we can see that. We can see that what's happening with voter suppression. We can see that, and I'm talking about voter suppression around the world. We can see that in terms of people rallying up their bases and getting their bases all worked up, even though it is directly and knowingly dividing countries. And I'm not just talking about here in the US, because we saw the same thing happen in the UK. We saw the same thing happen in many places around the world. So what we realized is that when you really boil it down, that leadership really is about the ability to influence people to an expected outcome. But then I think the other piece that's really important is that when things were well, everybody's moving on. Oh, he or she's a great leader. Things are going good. But when things really got crazy, when things really went wild, we started, as David said, seeing those leaders. Who's going to save me? Who's going to save me in this situation? And what that told me is that leadership has very little to do with position. That is not about the title. That is not about it's not about what ranking you have in the organization, but it really is about who is going to follow you and what is your expected end. What is your expected outcome? So that was kind of a long answer, but David, that's my answer.
It is a great answer. Richard, I really want to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, leadership, I would agree that trustworthiness, integrity is really high on the list in regard to what I would anticipate a leader, a good leader, to possess, and that is something that we certainly, integrity is something we haven't seen in politicians, regardless of their party, in a long time, it seems. And again, not only just here in the U.S., but I think across the world, in many countries, I think the populations would say similar things if they're allowed to. And so that's a big problem, because if you have leadership without integrity or empathy, how can there be good governance? You can't have it. It's true that there are oftentimes very difficult, especially when you're a leader of a large country or many peoples, that there are sometimes very hard decisions that have to be made that aren't necessarily equal for all, because that's part of making very, very tough decisions for strategic and long-term and sustainable reasons. But that's what makes a good leader, is to not letting those points in time happen with very often that those types of decisions don't have to be made, right? If they're caught early enough to prevent a situation from getting to that point. But nonetheless, it's that's what you would expect to find in a good leader is someone who knows and understands the people they're governing or responsible for, knows how to leverage the talents and skill sets and the specialties of the individuals that are under them to the best ability of the greater whole of all people. And that is something that we just don't see. We see too much specialization and too much favoring for individuals who aren't necessarily serving the best interest of the groups as a whole, but rather the personal interests or gains of a few individuals at top. And again, this is something that we've seen here in the States that goes beyond just the past, certainly 4 or 5 years, but is something that we've seen systemically gain foothold for the past 25 years in our politics here in the U.S., and something that has run rampant across many other countries around the world for decades. And so, again, sort of a long-winded answer to your, but anyway, that's what I certainly look for in a good leader. And that, again, we're relating everything back to a political or governance, but it doesn't matter. A president or a leader of a major corporation or a small business, it's the same. The process, the decision-making process is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. The decision-making process is the same wherever you are in society. That's why we say that the study of politics is the study of power relationships wherever you see them in society. You can see them in your house, or you can see them in government. One interesting thing that I saw that both of you said that you would see in a good leader is integrity. And basically seeing that person looking to do good for everyone more than themselves. The problem here is, I think that the reason that we have so many governments in such a bad position in this crisis is because, as Richard said, it became more about marketing, right? But the rise of that scenario where marketing could sway an election and sway voters came about because of a tendency towards populism. Populism is it's a political movement that's supposed to care for the ordinary people, right? That's where it comes from, the name. Mm-hmm. But what has been done is trying to get those ordinary people, the people that were not being heard usually, trying to get them angry about something. Angry enough that they will do anything to get you in office. And once you're in office, you only care about yourself. So it's populism without integrity. It's capitalism without integrity. It's leading a business without integrity. Whenever you do something like that, you are putting yourself in a position where you're not going to be able to do one of the key things that I think a leader needs to be able to do, and that's control chaos. Whenever chaos happens, a leader needs to be able to sit down, aside from chaos, analyze the possible solutions, and come up with the best plan to get out of this. And I know that when you don't have integrity, you do not know how to do that, because you don't really understand the people that you fooled into getting you the position, whatever it may be. So when do you think in history, and this is a complicated question, I don't know if you guys are going to have any sort of answer, but when do you think that change happened? When did we stop electing people that were capable and integral and honest, and started electing people that were not?
For me, it's very clear. It's when it's when our media and our news shifted from being about reporting truth to reporting opinions based on marketing dollars. So when when it was realized that they could get more revenue from marketing dollars from advertisers by catering the news or bending the news in a particular way that catered to a particular portion of the population that benefited the advertisers. That's when we started seeing opinion flow more and more and more into the news to generate larger, broader audiences that satisfied the marketing end games of the advertisers for a particular station or a particular broadcast. As a result of that, the point about that is that spilled over into what got airtime and what didn't get airtime, and as a result, what politicians and what voices suddenly were in front of the cameras more often, therefore creating that whole populist ideal that you were just talking about, and then suddenly it became obvious that the people that had more airtime in front of the cameras actually ended up getting reelected more often, and then that's when it was game over in regard to responsible politicians and now just marketing personalities in regard to getting my next 4 years or my next seat as governor or mayor and what have you, and it sort of went on there. So what period of time did all that happen? I want to say somewhere probably around the 50s and 60s, when we started losing our ability to actually broadcast news as just matter of fact items, as opposed to opinions and reflections of things that were happening. I think by the time we were in the late 60s, we were already full on into electing officials that were that had marketing analysts part on their payroll to drive their election campaigns. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Just on observations.
Right. I have a slightly different view of that, because I think I would ask the question, so when will we start electing people and allowing our looking for people with true integrity? And I'm not saying that there are not politicians and government workers and even business people who don't walk in integrity. I'm not saying that at all. There are a few. There are a few.
They're few and far between, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are a few. But I will say that we really haven't. And the reason that I say that, first of all, chattel slavery was really a thing in the U.S. And this was sanctioned by the government for a while there. Yeah. Before that, the U.S. Constitution did not see people who look like me as people. So it worked for them, but it wasn't really working for people who look like me. So integrity then would say that no, people are people. A human is a human. But when you're looking only at self-preservation and furtherance of self, then there is a superiority that comes into play. Then there is, oh, no. I don't mean those people, or I don't mean that property over there. I mean me. And here's the thing, it goes back beyond the foundation of the Americas. So I think it is a condition of humankind. I do. And I think that a part of our journey is to right that. A part of our experience in this world is to correct that, is to really dig and say, wait a minute, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? It has to be something more than just about me. And I think that is the exercise. That is the experiment. That's why we're here. And that's what we are working through. So I kind of see it from a different perspective. It just so happens that chattel slavery is probably the best example that I can come up with to represent. I don't think we have. Because even the people that we say, like the founders of our country, George Washington owned slaves. Thomas Jefferson, even though they tried to romanticize the story, no, he was having sex with a child. So let's be clear on our founding fathers and the people who established this, and these were men of integrity, who owned slaves and were pedophiles and all those kinds of things. Now, here's the complexity of the human experience as well. Did great things happen as a result of their actions? Absolutely. Absolutely they did. Real quick, kind of how I look at it, it's almost like, and this is something that I heard D.L. Hughley say, it's almost like the very same reason that I can still stand and sing the Star Spangled Banner, even though the third verse of that song talks about killing slaves, but that's still the song of this country. And so we just never get to the second and third verse. But do I stand for the ideals that the country was based on, even though those ideals were written without including me? Absolutely, I stand for them. But I also stand for being transparent about the realities of them as well.
And I think that's very important, what you're saying, Lamondre, because there's, as you said, it is human nature to elect people that basically represent the majority or the people that have the most power at that time. It has always happened, and it's probably going to continue to happen because that's who we are as a human race. We know that we created democracy trying to find a solution to that, and it didn't work out. It hasn't worked out, not for everyone. But there's a tendency in human nature to also always think that past times were better than what we have now. And that's absolutely not true. We know that things are better now than they were in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 30s. Things get better for humanity. And as things get better for humanity, we know that there's a big potential in education to actually create change from the roots, to basically change people before they are able to make decisions, to help them make the best decisions that they can. I think that the only solution that we have to that human nature problem is educating people on why you should elect someone that's going to do the hard things instead of only tell you the nice things that you want to have.
It's certainly addressing this from the human nature. Leadership in human nature is something that goes back, of course, to the dawn of time. And one of the fascinating things about that is if one studies ancient history and Rome and the meeting minutes, if you will, of the Roman senates, which are all absolutely recorded and available for, well, if you can find them, but there is hundreds of years worth of Senate hearings from the Roman Empire, where the issues that we're going through have all been gone through again as the Roman Empire went through its rise and fall, and we're somewhere along that curve, right? We're because there's an inevitability of that, so democracy is a continuous evolving thought ideal, and even though we like to think that we are the epitome of it, I think that we are just along that gradient scale of democracy as it's evolved. And it behooves us, as David, you said, education and awareness about what has happened in the past, looking at the parallels, because again, we're not going through anything new or unique, that centuries ago, peoples and governments have had to go through the same sorts of things. And human nature, oddly enough, is the common thread between all of that, is that we tend to act exactly the same way. And we have much more modern tools. And I think the speed to which we're able to accomplish things is at a faster rate, only because of the technologies and the modern telecommunications we have and so forth. So at a global scale, things happen much more instantly than they did back in those days. But the issues and challenges held by the leaders are really identical, and being students of that and going back, I mean, I think it should be paramount that all of our senators and legislators go through and study some of those Senate hearings going back to the Roman Empire, and analyze and look and see, because we are the human animal, we are the human species, and we behave exactly the same way as we did 1,000 years ago. Nothing has changed because we're hardware. You know, David, like you said, we're sort of hardwired that way. Leaders will be attracted by a certain type of leader. We will fall victims to certain type of leaders, and it's up to us to have the wherewithal to be able to identify that early enough before it becomes a problem to us, the people.
Yeah. You know, I remember thinking, when I was younger, I remember thinking, how could a Hitler come to power? How could these tyrants, I mean, in the 20th century, how could that happen in the 20th century? But what has happened in the last few years, I see exactly how it could happen. Fear, division, a sense of someone is taking something from you, censorship, absolutely. Demonizing the outlets where people get most of their information from, which, you know, before were considered extremely credible. But now I see exactly how that could come about. And I could see how it can happen over and over again now. You know, because it's really scary to think about what we're really capable of, in many instances. But it's also extremely uplifting to think about what we're capable of. You know, that we can do better, that we must do better. In fact, I believe that we are doing better and we will do better. I just believe that some of the things that we're dealing with now are necessary in order for us to really take a look at who we are, to really understand that, wait a minute, it is so easy for us to get caught up into this thing of, I'm exceptional or I'm special and those people over there are trying to take something from me. When you really boil down to it, you realize that we're actually all the same and that we want the same things. You know, we may have different ideas of how we get there, but we really are striving for, by and large, we're striving for the same things. And so while I believe there has been a great void of leadership that has really been highlighted over this past year, especially, the truth is I also believe that there has been a great door opened for people to step forward. And it has nothing to do, again, with titles. It has nothing to do with position. It really has nothing to do with charisma or any of those attributes either. But it has everything to do with, I can influence people in a positive way to a positive outcome. And I believe that those people are standing up, and I believe that I still believe in us. I'm going to say it again. I believe in us.
And it is something good to always believe in the power of humans to do the right thing. I think we all know that there's that drop of good in every single human being, even though they might not appear as such when they have power. And there's always that old adage that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I do think that there needs to be a way to find balance, and that the corruption that power brings comes, as Lamandro was saying, from the fear of losing power.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And whoever you are in society, you have probably more power than someone else just because of your race, your gender, your abilities, something. Something puts you on top of someone else in the political scale, and you don't want to be moved from there because you fear losing that power. This brings me to one of the things that I want to say closing this episode of 3D View. And it comes from a book called Conversations with God. I don't agree with everything that's said in that book, but one thing is that it says that every bad feeling that you have, every evil thing that happens in your brain comes from fear. And the opposite of that feeling is love. And when Jesus was asked, what is the most important law? His answer was simple. Love God above all else and love your neighbor as you would love yourself. And if we all start working from that essence, I don't care if you're Christian or not, the essence of thinking first of everyone else and how what you're doing is going to affect them, I think that's the way that we can build a new generation of actual integral, honest leaders that are going to take us to the next level of whatever democracy or whatever new political system that we create. But it needs to come from love. It can't come from the place of fear that we all are at some point in our lives.
That's beautiful, man. Great way to end it.
Yep. Yeah,
It's
it's a great
way
quote
to end the episode. Thanks for listening again, and see you in the next one.
Thanks for joining us this week on 3D View. Make sure to visit our website, ruglobal.com/3dview. That's ruhglobal.com/3dvu, where you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts or join our YouTube channel so you will never miss a show. While you're at it, if you find value in the show, we appreciate it if you would leave a like or comment, or simply tell a friend about the show. That would really help us a lot too. If you would like to join our conversations, you can join our Facebook community, 3D View, 3 Perspectives, 1 Conversation.